Imagine popping an antacid for your severe heartburn.
Right, thinking you're doing exactly what you're supposed to do.
Exactly. You're trying to put out the fire. But then you find out that your stomach was actually burning because you don't have enough stomach acid.
Which just sounds completely counterintuitive.
It really does. I mean, it sounds totally backward. But that paradox is exactly what we are unpacking today. So welcome back to the deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one.
Yeah, today we are looking into a really comprehensive stack of clinical research and literature on the quiet, often misunderstood mechanics of aging digestion.
Which is a huge topic.
It is. Our focus is specifically on what happens under the hood for those 50 and older. We're looking at why nutrient absorption fundamentally dictates your daily energy and, how to actually support a changing biological system rather than fighting against it.
It's such a fascinating area of human physiology, really, because digestion is essentially the required bridge between the outside world and your internal function.
Right, the bridge.
Yeah. We spend so much time obsessing over the quality of the food we consume, like the macros, the sourcing, the protein content.
How constantly.
But if that digestive bridge is compromised, it really doesn't matter how premium the cargo is. I mean, the body simply cannot utilize what it cannot chemically access.
And that brings us right to the core of the issue, which is stomach acid, specifically hydrochloric acid.
Yes, the big player.
The data we are looking at highlights this staggering biological shift. Like, once we cross that 60-year mark, stomach acid production can drop by nearly half.
By half? It's wild.
Half. We are talking about a clinical condition called hypochlorhydria. And it just feels like something that should be front-page news for anyone trying to stay active as they age.
It absolutely should be.
Yeah.
And to understand why that drop is so catastrophic, we really have to elevate how we think about stomach acid in general.
Because most people just picture, like, a vat of corrosive liquid.
Right, just melting whatever drops into it. But hydrochloric acid is highly calibrated. It's responsible for dropping the pH of the stomach to an incredibly acidic level, usually between 1.5 and 3.0.
Which is really acidic.
Very. And that extreme acidity is what denatures the proteins you eat. It takes these tightly folded, complex protein structures and physically unspools them.
Okay, wait, let me unpack this. So it's prepping the protein, but not actually dismantling it yet.
Precisely. The acid unspools it, which exposes the chemical bonds. But more importantly, that highly acidic environment is the trigger required to convert an inactive enzyme called pepsinogen into its active form.
Which is pepsin, right?
Yes, pepsin. Pepsin is the enzyme that actually cleaves the peptide bonds. It breaks that unspooled protein down into individual usable amino acids.
Oh, okay. So if the hydrochloric acid isn't strong enough to drop the pH,
Then the pepsin never activates.
Wow.
The protein just remains locked away. You could be eating the highest quality grass-fed steak or wild-caught salmon. But without pepsin cleaving those bonds, your body is just passing it through as expensive waste.
I'm trying to visualize this practically. It sounds less like a problem with the actual fuel you're putting in and more like a pinched fuel line in a high-end luxury car.
That's a great way to look at it.
Because you can pump premium gas all day, but if it never reaches the engine, you're just going to flood the system.
And when you flood a biological system, the engine doesn't just stall, it starts experiencing collateral damage.
Because it's not just the protein, right?
Right, because the stomach isn't just failing to extract amino acids. That lack of acidity also severely impairs the absorption of critical micronutrients.
Like what?
Iron, calcium, magnesium, and vitamin B12. They all require a highly acidic gastric environment to be cleaved from their food matrix and absorbed later in the small intestine.
Which means the ripple effect of this one single failure, like just having low stomach acid, spreads throughout the entire body.
It touches everything.
Let's trace that ripple effect. Because the research connects this to symptoms you just wouldn't intuitively link to digestion. Obviously, there are the visible signs, right?
Yeah, the heavy feeling after meals, the bloating, the irregular bowel movements.
But the invisible signs seem far more insidious.
The invisible signs are where we really start to see chronic systemic decline. Take sarcopenia, for example.
That's the muscle loss, right?
Exactly. The age-related gradual loss of muscle mass and function. For decades, we've largely attributed sarcopenia just to a lack of resistance training or inadequate protein intake in older adults.
Just, not moving enough or not eating enough meat.
Right. But when you factor in hypochlorhydria, you realize that the body is experiencing an internal amino acid deficit. It isn't getting the building blocks it needs from the gut.
Oh, wow. So what does it do?
Well, To maintain necessary protein pools in the blood for vital organ function, it begins to catabolize or break down its own skeletal muscle.
That is wild. The body is literally cannibalizing its own muscle tissue because the digestive system can't extract the protein sitting right there in the stomach.
Exactly. And the ripple effect hits the endocrine system and the nervous system as well. Consider your blood sugar stability.
Okay, how does that connect?
Well, the pancreas, which also scales back enzyme production as we age, fails to fully break down complex carbohydrates alongside this sluggish stomach. So those undigested carbs travel into the lower intestines.
And what happens there?
There, they ferment. And that fermentation process alters the gut microbiome and can contribute to erratic blood glucose swings.
And the research stack also points heavily to the gut-brain axis here, right?
It does. It's all connected.
We talk about brain fog and cognitive fatigue as we age, but neurotransmitter synthesis the production of serotonin and dopamine relies heavily on the gut's ability to extract specific amino acids and vitamins.
Absolutely. If you aren't absorbing B12 and your gut motility is compromised, your neurological health is directly in the crosshairs.
It's a perfect storm. Even blood pressure regulation is involved. I mean, we mentioned earlier that magnesium and potassium require an acidic environment for absorption.
And both of those minerals are crucial for maintaining the elasticity of your blood vessels.
Right. So digestion isn't happening in a vacuum. It is the foundational layer sitting quietly beneath your cardiovascular, neurological, and musculoskeletal systems.
Okay, so clearly this isn't a cliff you just suddenly fall off in your 60th birthday. It's a progressive slide.
Yeah, the clinical literature breaks this decline down into a really helpful timeline. They classify it as the 4 seasons of digestion.
I like that framework a lot.
Me too. I think exploring these biological realities phase by phase helps contextualize what is actually happening.
It's very pragmatic. It reframes aging from a pathology into a series of management phases.
So let's go through them. The first season is from ages 50 to 60.
Right, designated as the active prevention window. During this decade, parietal cell mass in the stomach, those are the cells that secrete hydrochloric acid, they might still be largely intact, but their secretory capacity begins its stealth decline.
So you might not feel it yet.
You might not feel major symptoms yet, no. But the physiological margin for error is shrinking. The dietary habits you solidify here dictate the trajectory of your gut health for the rest of your life.
Okay, and then we hit the 60 to 70 window, which they call the aware management phase.
Yes.
This seems to be the threshold where the compounding effects really surface. The bloating, the heavy feeling after dinner, the sudden intolerance to foods you've eaten your whole life.
Yeah, because the digestive reserves are officially depleted. The pancreas isn't putting out as much amylase or lipase for carbs and fats. The liver's bile output is less efficient, and the stomach acid is demonstrably low.
And this is the decade where medical interventions usually enter the picture, right?
Often misguided ones, which we will definitely get to. But the literature stresses that if you manage the mechanics thoughtfully, optimal absorption is still highly achievable here.
Okay, so moving into the 70 to 80 phase, the focus shifts to gentle maintenance.
The biological reality here is that structural changes are occurring. The villi in the intestines flatten slightly, which reduces the surface area for absorption.
And motility slows down too.
Yes, the muscular contractions that move food along slows down significantly. It's a period where the workload on the digestive tract needs to be manually adjusted.
And finally, 80 and beyond. This season is centered on dignity and quality of life.
The goal here is mitigating discomfort, maximizing nutrient density in very small, easily processed volumes, and just understanding that a reduced appetite is a natural physiological adaptation. It's not necessarily a crisis to be fought.
This timeline brings up a massive physiological catch-22 that jumped out at me in the research, specifically from the nutrition scientists at Tufts University.
The protein paradox.
Yes. Their data highlights that older adults actually require significantly more protein per kilogram of body weight than younger adults to fend off that sarcopenia we discussed.
Right, because of anabolic resistance.
Wait, what does that mean?
It means the aging muscles become less responsive to the signals that trigger protein synthesis. So you need more protein just to get the same result.
Right. So we're talking upwards of 1.2 grams per kilogram. But if institutions like Tufts are saying older adults need a much higher volume of protein to maintain their muscle mass, and we just established that their stomachs literally cannot cleave the peptide bonds to absorb it.
How do we solve that?
Exactly. How do we solve it? We can't just throw massive, dense steaks at a stomach that refuses to process them.
You've identified the central tension of aging wellness right there. The biological demand for raw materials goes up, while the machinery required to process those materials is powering down.
It feels like a trap.
It does. But the solution is that we have to fundamentally change our behavioral interventions. If we lack the biological brute force we had in our 20s, we have to start manually stimulating the system.
So we have to change how we eat, not just what we eat.
Exactly. Let's get into those behavioral interventions, because looking at the clinical data here, the solutions are surprisingly accessible.
Yeah, we aren't talking about obscure pharmaceutical compounds. We're talking about manipulating our physiology through habit.
Let's start with the vagus nerve and the nervous system. The literature emphasizes eating in an unhurried, seated, calm environment.
Which sounds like just generic wellness advice, honestly.
It sounds like it, sure. But the mechanism behind it is hardcore physiology. Your autonomic nervous system operates in two main modes: sympathetic, which is fight or flight, and parasympathetic, which is rest and digest.
And in our modern world, we are almost chronically in a sympathetic state. I mean, we are eating in traffic, we're scrolling through stressful news on our phones, rushing to meetings.
Exactly. And when you are in a sympathetic state, your body literally shunts blood flow away from the splenic circulation.
Which is the blood vessels serving the gut.
Right. It redirects that blood to your skeletal muscles and brain to deal with the perceived threat. You cannot secrete adequate gastric juices or initiate proper peristalsis if your nervous system is convinced you are actively outrunning a predator.
That makes total sense.
You have to manually trigger the parasympathetic tone before you take a single bite.
Which perfectly explains the next intervention. Drinking a glass of warm water with a little lemon juice about 20 minutes prior to a meal. It's not just a spa trick.
No, it's a chemical primer.
How does it work?
Well, the warmth relaxes the gastric muscles, and the slight acidity of the lemon juice acts as a mild chemical signal. It essentially preloads the stomach, waking up the parietal cells and stimulating the initial secretion of hydrochloric acid before the heavy, dense protein load actually arrives.
I love the mechanics of that. It's so simple. Another intervention that stood out is mastication, chewing thoroughly.
Oh, this is a big one.
The recommendation of 20 chews per bite feels like an eternity when you actually try to do it. But the reasoning is solid. Digestion doesn't start in the stomach.
It starts in the mouth. Saliva contains salivary amylase, which begins the chemical breakdown of carbohydrates immediately. But more importantly, the mechanical breakdown of the food increases its surface area.
So the smaller the pieces, the easier it is on the stomach.
Exactly. The smaller the particles entering the stomach, the less acidic workload is required to penetrate and denature the food matrix. You are literally outsourcing the stomach's job to your teeth.
Okay, here is where I really want to push back on one of the hydration habits because it completely flips conventional wisdom on its head.
Let's hear it.
We are constantly told to drink plenty of water, right? Especially with meals, to help, quote, wash things down. But the clinical literature explicitly warns against drinking large volumes of liquid during a meal if you are over 50.
It's a vital paradigm shift. Think back to the pH environment we discussed earlier.
The 1.5 to 3.0 range.
Right. If your parietal cells are already struggling to drop the stomach pH down to that critical range, the absolute worst thing you can do is flood the stomach with 16 ounces of ice water while you're eating.
Because it dilutes the gastric juices?
It massively dilutes the concentration of the acid. It raises the pH, which immediately deactivates whatever pepsin you managed to produce.
Oh, wow.
And it physically distends the stomach, which can prematurely signal fullness. You want to hydrate aggressively between meals to maintain cellular hydration and mucosal lining health. But during the actual meal, fluid intake should be incredibly modest, just enough to help with swallowing.
That makes total sense when you understand the chemistry. You're trying to protect that highly concentrated acidic environment. And the data stack actually includes a few clinical case studies that demonstrate this beautifully.
The real-life applications are amazing.
Yeah, there's a case of a 63-year-old woman, let's call her Sarah, who was dealing with profound post-meal fatigue and muscle weakness.
Classic symptoms.
Right. And she didn't overhaul her macros. She simply stimulated her vagal response by slowing down, introduced the warm lemon water primer, and began heavily chewing her food.
Just mechanical changes.
Exactly. And the extraction of nutrients improved so dramatically that her energy levels rebounded without changing a single item on her plate.
Because she stopped flooding the engine and finally fixed the fuel line.
Yes. And another case, Michael. A 71-year-old suffering from severe post-dinner bloating and disrupted sleep. His intervention was just as mechanical. He stopped drinking huge glasses of water during dinner, and he implemented a 15-minute gentle walk immediately after eating.
That post-meal walk is a phenomenal tool.
It really works.
Absolutely. It leverages gravity and light physical movement to stimulate gastric emptying and intestinal peristalsis. It physically assists the transit of food out of the stomach, reducing the window of time it has to cause discomfort.
So we've covered the behavioral how. Now let's touch briefly on the what. Because while behavior is paramount, there are specific foods that act almost like exogenous digestive tools.
We can strategically use food to supplement the enzymes our organs are struggling to synthesize.
Right, like the literature points to several functional foods. Pineapple, for instance, contains an enzyme called bromelain. Papaya contains papain.
Both are naturally occurring proteolytic enzymes, meaning they help cleave those protein bonds, essentially acting as biological stand-ins for your diminished pepsin.
Nature's chemical scissors.
Exactly. Then you have bone broth, which is rich in gelatin, glycine, and glutamine. These amino acids don't require heavy digestive lifting to absorb, and they actively repair the mucosal lining of the intestinal tract.
Which is so important as we age.
It is. And of course, the integration of fermented foods like kefir, sauerkraut, or kimchi. These provide diverse, transient probiotic strains to support the microbiome, which, naturally loses diversity as we age.
And conversely, the dietary landmines are exactly what you'd predict based on this compromised system.
Oh yeah. Heavily fried foods, for one. They require a massive output of bile and pancreatic lipase that just isn't there anymore.
And ultra-processed foods, right? They lack the fiber necessary for motility, and they degrade the gut lining.
And eating heavy meals late at night. That completely disrupts the migrating motor complex, which is the gut's overnight cleaning cycle.
It's also critical to note that as we navigate these dietary tools, anyone on medication needs to be highly aware of interactions.
Very true. Balancing vitamin K intake if you're on anticoagulants, or monitoring potassium levels if kidney function is a concern. The goal is functional assistance, but always within the bounds of your specific medical context.
Okay, so this brings us to the grand finale of this deep dive, the central mystery we teased at the very beginning.
The heartburn paradox.
Yes, the heartburn paradox. Armed with the biochemical understanding of hypochlorhydria, protein denaturing, and gastric emptying, let's finally solve why so many older adults are experiencing severe acid reflux when their acid is actually critically low. Let's break down the exact mechanism.
It is one of the most tragic misunderstandings in modern healthcare. The common assumption is simple. If you feel burning, discomfort, and acid splashing up into your esophagus, your stomach must be overproducing acid.
Right. It feels like a volume problem, like there's too much acid, so it just spills over.
But apply the mechanics we just explored. If you have hypochlorhydria, your stomach pH is too high. It isn't acidic enough.
Okay.
Because it isn't acidic enough, the food is not broken down efficiently. Because the food isn't broken down, gastric emptying is severely delayed. The meal just sits there in the stomach for hours longer than it is biologically supposed to.
And the stomach is a warm, dark, moist environment.
Exactly. And when you leave partially digested carbohydrates and proteins in a warm, sluggish environment, bacteria begin to feast on it. The food begins to ferment.
It essentially starts rotting in your stomach.
It does. And the byproduct of bacterial fermentation is gas. As this gas is produced, it expands, drastically increasing the intragastric pressure.
Oh, I see where this is going.
That pressure has to go somewhere. It pushes upward against the lower esophageal sphincter, which is the muscular valve that separates the stomach from the esophagus. The pressure forces that valve open, and whatever small amount of acidic fluid is present in the stomach is propelled upward into the unprotected esophageal tissue.
Wow, okay, I see it now. The burning isn't caused by an ocean of acid overflowing. It's caused by gas pressure forcing a tiny puddle of acid into the wrong compartment.
Exactly.
Furthermore, doesn't the fermentation process itself produce organic acids like lactic acid that cause their own burning sensation?
Yes. The fermentation creates organic acids that highly irritate the gastric mucosa, causing that profound bloating and burning feeling.
This is a terrifying realization. When older adults feel that burning and immediately reach for over-the-counter antacids or get prescribed proton pump inhibitors, they are chemically neutralizing the tiny, insufficient amount of acid they actually had left.
It is the absolute definition of a vicious cycle. You feel burning caused by fermentation, which is fundamentally caused by low acid.
So you take a medication that shuts down acid production entirely.
Right. And the next time you eat, the stomach has zero chemical ability to digest the food. The fermentation happens faster, the gas pressure builds higher, the bloating is more severe, and your nutrient absorption drops to near zero.
You are literally starving your muscular and neurological systems of vital amino acids and minerals because you are chemically turning off your digestive engine, all based on a misinterpretation of a symptom.
We have been translating the body's language completely wrong. The burning isn't a sign of excess. It's a sign of profound stagnation. It is the body's cry for help to accelerate the digestive process, not to extinguish it.
And understanding that fundamental difference, approaching your body's signals with scientific curiosity rather than just throwing a chemical band-aid at a flawed assumption, I mean, that changes the entire trajectory of how you age.
It really does.
To synthesize everything we've pulled from this research stack today, the core takeaway is just deeply empowering. Your health, particularly your digestive health as you age, is not a destination you arrive at and just hope for the best.
No, it's an active process.
It is a direction you consciously choose every single day through targeted, mindful habits. A warm glass of lemon water, mechanically breaking down your food, managing your fluid intake, walking after dinner. Aging digestion isn't a failure of the body. It simply requires a more sophisticated, intentional partnership with your body.
You have to work with the specific biological system you have today, not the one you had 30 years ago.
It's a necessary shift from relying on biological brute force to practicing gentle, mechanical cooperation.
I couldn't have summarized it better.
And that leaves us with a final thought I want you, the listener, to mull over as we wrap up this deep dive. We live in a relentless, hyper-fast modern world. It's a culture that expects us to eat on the run, chronically stressed, staring at screens, gulping down ice water, and just ignoring our biological rhythms.
Which is so tough on the system.
It is. That is a lifestyle that demands incredibly robust, youthful stomach acid to force digestion to happen despite the chaos. But as we age, we naturally lose that biological brute force. So maybe our digestive system slowing down isn't actually a failure at all.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Maybe it is just the body's natural, built-in alarm clock finally going off, forcing us to slow down, be present, and give our meals, and ultimately ourselves, the respect and attention they actually deserve.